Welcome to another episode of Archive Drive, where history meets horsepower. Today, we take a deep dive into one of the most refined and underrated rivalries of the muscle car era. The Buick GS 455 Stage 1 versus the Oldsmobile 442 W-30. These weren't just performance cars. They were statement pieces from two of GM's most upscale brands, siblings at war in a GM family feud that briefly set the streets and drag strips on fire. Origins of the Gentleman Musclecars. Let's rewind to the mid-1960s. Pontiac had already kickstarted the muscle car movement with the legendary 1964 GTO, thanks to the vision of John Z. DeLorean. Not wanting to be left behind, Oldsmobile answered the call with the 442, born as an upscale cutlass with serious power and handling. Just months later, Buick introduced its own contender, the Grand Sport. Though it was badged with a 400, the GS actually featured a 401 cubic inch nailhead V8, slightly skirting GM's own internal engine displacement rules. Fast forward to 1970, and GM finally lifted its 400c limit for A-body cars. This opened the floodgates, and Buick didn't hesitate. Enter the Buick GS 455 Stage 1 and the Oldsmobile 442 W-30. Both were classy, both were brutal, and both were aimed not at kids in denim jackets, but executives with leather briefcases and lead feet. Rising to the occasion, Buick wasn't exactly known for performance, but the company was eager to change that. The 1970 launch of the Opel GT had brought unexpected traffic to Buick showrooms. That excitement gave birth to the GSX, a wild-looking GS 455 in yellow with flat black stripes, designed to catch eyes and boost sales. But it wasn't just about looks. Underneath that hood was the torque monster Stage 1455 V8, producing up to 510 pound-feet of torque, making it one of the strongest engines GM ever built. Oldsmobile wasn't standing still either. The W-30 variant of the 442 had always been more than just a sticker package. It featured aluminum components, upgraded internals, and those massive dual-hood scoops that fed cold air to the high-compression V8 beneath. This was a rare period in automotive history when GM divisions weren't competing with Ford or Chrysler. They were competing with each other. The GS 455 Stage 1 and W-30 were essentially first cousins, sharing the same A-body platform, but each fine-tuned to their division's unique character. Stage 1 vs. W-30 on the street. So how did they actually compare on the street? In a 1970 Motor Trend Showdown, a Buick GS 455 Stage 1 clocked 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, barely edging out a 71 W-30 prototype at 6.6 seconds. But the story didn't end there. When Oldsmobile offered up a W-30 with an automatic and different valve timing, it blasted to 60 in just 6.1 seconds, quicker than the GTO, the Chevelle SS 454, and even the Plymouth Roadrunner. The cars weren't just fast, they had poise. Despite their size, both handled better than their muscle car peers. The GS was more buttoned down, refined, with tighter body control and less squat under acceleration. The W-30 had that raw, muscle feel, larger hood scoops, a throaty growl, and a more aggressive aesthetic. But in the cabin, both felt luxurious, a stark contrast to the bare-bones interiors of many performance cars of the day. The muscle car era fades. Unfortunately, just as Buick and Olds found their muscle mojo, the party ended. Rising insurance premiums, stricter emissions regulations, and the birth of the EPA all landed between 1970 and 1972. Compression ratios were lowered across the board, from 10.5:1 to 8.5:1. Gross horsepower ratings were replaced with net figures. In short, the muscle era was winding down, and these high-powered machines were on borrowed time. By 1972, the mighty Hemi Cuda was gone, and muscle cars like the GTO and Chevelle were shadows of their former selves. Yet, somehow, the Buick GS Stage 1 still stood tall. In Motor Trend's 1972 Sayonara Supercar feature, it outran both the GTO and the W-30 in 0 to 60 in the quarter mile. Even neutered, it had muscle. These cars only survived because a 1971 UAW strike delayed GM's next General A body, giving us one final year of truly legendary muscle before the curtain fell. Design and legacy. Visually, these cars are a study in contrast and identity. The Olds W-30 carried Bill Mitchell's organic fuselage lines, a split grille, wide hips, and flowing fastback lines. The Buick had a cleaner, more formal look with refined surface creases and two centered ram air scoops on the hood. Inside, both were comfortable, plush even. The Olds had its Hurst dual-gate shifter. The Buick, tall seating, soft ride, but undeniable strength beneath. Both cars had play in the steering. This was still early 70s Detroit iron, after all, but neither wallowed like their full-size siblings. Their power bands were strongest in the mid-range. Once warmed up, they roared with NASCAR-like fury. Haddock's 1972 GS 455 even uses 70 spec 10.5 pistons. Why wouldn't I? He said. That sums it up perfectly. In the twilight of the muscle car era, when the roar of high-compression V8s began to fade under the weight of regulation and rising fuel costs, two unlikely contenders stood tall, refined, elegant, and unapologetically powerful. The Buick GS 455 Stage 1 and the Oldsmobile 442 W-30 weren't the loudest kids on the block, but they were among the most composed. These weren't stripped-down street brawlers built solely for drag strips. These were muscle cars for executives, engineers, and enthusiasts who wanted big power with a touch of class. They were the gentlemen's hot rods. Both machines had the strength to run with the legends, challenging Hemis, Chevelles, and GTOs, but they delivered that performance with maturity. The GS 455 Stage 1 was a torque titan, quiet on idle, but savage when provoked. The W-30? A perfect blend of raw induction and refined engineering. In many ways, these cars were a final love letter to the muscle era before it was dismantled by insurance actuaries and emissions mandates. They weren't built to sell millions. They weren't created to appease the masses. They were crafted for those who truly understood what made performance special, those who appreciated the blend of engineering excellence and mechanical muscle. Today, they exist not just as collector's items tucked away in climate-controlled garages, but as symbols. Symbols of a time when GM's internal divisions competed fiercely, building faster, more powerful cars not just to outpace Ford or Chrysler, but to outshine each other. The Buick GS 455 Stage 1 and the Oldsmobile 442 W-30 weren't just rivals. They were brothers in arms, forged from the same corporate steel, each trying to outclass the other on their own terms. So as we look back, it's not just about horsepower or 0 to 60 times. It's about the soul of the machine, the pride of the badge, the sense that what you were driving wasn't just fast, it was something special. Which one would you choose? The composed and thunderous GS 455 Stage 1 or the aggressive and iconic W-30? Let us know in the comments, which of these GM Titans would you put in your dream garage? If you loved this deep dive into GM's muscle car civil war, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more legendary matchups, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. Until next time, keep the throttle down and the nostalgia alive.